Hello friends, welcome back. Today I will continue my discussion related to group behavior, and in a previous discussion I talked in detail about different kind of groups in terms of command groups, task group and group works. Today I am going to discuss about different type of group therapies, and one of the most popular and prominent therapy is cognitive behavioral group therapy. This is the therapy which can be used at individual and group level, and the major focus of this therapy is to reduce symptoms of various mental health conditions including depression and anxiety. Now, how depression and anxiety occurs within an individual? There has to be a pattern of thoughts, behaviors which a person formulates in a particular situation, and that thought pattern becomes distorted or sometimes disorganized. With the regular passage of time, when a person is trapped in this kind of distorted thinking pattern and beliefs, it traps an individual to that level that the person is pushed to suffer from depression and anxiety symptoms. This is the base of or aim of cognitive behavioral groups and therapy, that what is the aim and how it can be reduced to minimum level. So, the focus of cognitive behavioral group is to change, alter and challenge the cognitive distortions and improve emotional regulation and develop personal coping strategies that solves current problems. Now, when any thought pattern which is distorted will definitely lead to occurrence of negative emotional feelings only, and again it sets a precedence to create more negativity in the behavior and how to reduce it. So, cognitive behavioral therapy focuses on changing or altering the automatic negative thoughts that contribute to detroit the thought pattern of an individual and leads to depression and anxiety. Now, this kind of thought pattern becomes a usual pattern within an individual. For example, a person encounters any negative situation, the person develops a habit to every time perceive the situation even though it is negative and develop a negative thought pattern. So, that development of negative thought pattern becomes automatic or spontaneous and push himself in the state of depression and anxiety, and definitely it affects an individual's mood. So, how an individual can come out or breach that pattern of distorted thought pattern, that is the aim of cognitive behavioral therapy, and how it can be used. So, cognitive behavioral therapy at individual and group level can be implemented, can be used through various techniques. It is not only one single technique, it uses different kind of techniques which can help people to deal with different kind of behavioral or mental health issues. The first is dialectical behavior therapy. This addresses destructive or disturbing thought patterns and incorporates certain treatments which helps an individual to deal with emotional problems based on emotional regulation and mindfulness. Emotional regulation, it is not only about dealing with your own emotions, but also understanding the other person's emotion and then responding to that situation or person. Whereas mindfulness, it is basically a technique, behavioral technique, where a person learns to identify the discriminatory behaviors and attitudes that affect the individual behavior and try to disassociate themselves from those events and only focus on the present moment and not thinking about past or future. Now, once the person is connected only to the present moment, the person can identify himself in that situation and discriminate or disassociate oneself from other negative events and stimulus in the environment. This is mindfulness. Once this behavioral technique is being adopted by any person, the person is able to break that negative pattern of thoughts or the destructive patterns of thoughts and behavior and incorporates in daily life. Then ultimately the thought pattern becomes organized and regular. This is the aim of dialectical behavior therapy, that is DBT. The other is multimodal therapy. Any person who is undergoing some severe treatment, definitely the treatment has its impact on human behavior as well. So, every time medication is not only the solution, but if any behavioral problem has been diagnosed, then how that problem can be treated based on some behavioral therapy will add more advantage to the treatment. That is the multimodal therapy. So, multimodal therapy basically identifies 7 different aspects or psychological issues that deals with the treatment and diagnosis. The first is affect, that is emotions, behavior, imagery, cognition, interpersonal factors and drug or biological considerations. These aspects when are being diagnosed and an assessment is being made, then how proper medication and enhancement of that diagnosis through proper medication and treatment can help a person to overcome or cope with different kind of behavioral issues. That is multimodal therapy. The idea is that the multimodal therapy improves the treatment outcomes. It is not only about physical treatment, it is also about behavioral treatment that adds to the success of any treatment. And the other is rational emotive behavior therapy. This involves identifying irrational beliefs, actively challenging these beliefs and finally learning to recognize and change these outcome patterns. Definitely developing rational emotive therapy, one has to become aware that where his emotions are going and flowing in what direction. If a person is failing to understand his emotions and other person's emotions, then definitely it becomes difficult for any person to recognize or alter his own behavioral patterns. Once therapist makes a person aware to alter his behavior, then that the way a person responds to the situation becomes more realistic and healthier than the previous responses. So, the goal of REBT, that is rational emotive behavior therapy, is to help people recognize and alter those beliefs and negative thinking patterns in order to overcome psychological problems and mental distress. Every time responding in a one way to any situation will create or weave a pattern of negative behavior responses. If any psychologist or helps a person to identify those responses and then alter in a very rational manner, then it becomes easy for the person to cope with mental health issues or mental distress. So, these are the 3 specific therapeutic approaches to cognitive behavioral therapy at individual and group level: the dialectical behavior therapy, the multimodal therapy and rational emotive behavior therapy. At the same time, cognitive behavioral therapy is used to treat a wide range of psychological problems such as addiction, anger, anxiety, bipolar disorder, depression, eating disorders, panic attacks, that is anxiety, again personality disorders and phobias. Apart from it, it has been found to help people cope with chronic pain and illness, divorce or breakups, grief or loss, insomnia, low self-esteem, relationship problems and stress management. These issues are very much related to an individual's daily life. Every person is very much facing these kind of issues, and how these issues dominate an individual behavior in day to day life, that it disturbs or it weaves a negative thought pattern or leads to distorted thought patterns, and how our relationships also get affected based on those responses. Under such circumstances, when a person fails to overcome, then definitely CBTs are very useful techniques and approaches to overcome those behavioral issues. So, the benefit of cognitive theory is cognitive behavioral therapy is that it underlies thoughts and feelings and play an important role in behavior. So, thoughts and feelings are very important when we are talking about CBTs, that it benefits people to improve their distorted thought patterns in a regular and organized manner, so that the person is able to align his thought pattern with his actions and responses. Therefore, the goal of CBT is to teach people that while they cannot control every aspect of the world, but they can control how they interpret and deal with things in their environment. It is all about that how we perceive the situation and how we respond to the situation, while ignoring the other aspects which are not relevant to us. CBT is known for providing the following key benefits. It helps to develop healthier thought patterns by becoming aware of the negative and often unrealistic thoughts that dampen feelings and moods. It is effective for a wide variety. It is effective for a wide variety of maladaptive behaviors in terms of improving those maladaptive behaviors. It is effective whether therapy occurs online or face to face. This is very effective therapy even during face to face interaction or offline. It can be used for those who do not require psychotropic medication, that is medicines that are used to cure psychological problems. So, maybe before psychotropic medications, CBTs can play a very important role to heal the person's mental health issues. And one of the greatest benefit of cognitive behavioral therapy is that it helps clients develop coping skills that can be useful both now and in the future. Okay. Next is interpersonal group therapy. As the term implies, it is an approach to the treatment of psychological, behavioral and emotional problems that emphasizes the curative influence of exploring the interactions of group members, including the analysis of events, experiences and relationship. Any interaction that happens at group level to help members to cope or develop a coping mechanism to overcome some psychological issues. Under such circumstances, interpersonal group therapy plays a significant role. So, the most basic aim of interpersonal group therapy or IGT is to cultivate a pattern of communication and effective communication among members, so that people can identify their mental health issues based on relational deficits or role conflicts. There are interpersonal problems that happens within two people in the family or in or at workplaces. How people tend to overcome those problems, that is relational deficits or role conflicts, even in teams when people work, then how they tend to overcome those conflicts, that is the focus or aim of IGT. Therefore, IGT recognizes the conflicting forces in the mind, and some of which may be outside one's awareness, and determine a person's behavior whether healthful or unhealthful. So, in order to identify the forces that are working or in action behind any conflict that takes place. So, in IGT, counselors generally help people to identify those forces and tend to overcome those forces and heal the relational conflicts or role conflicts or relational deficits by identifying those forces, curbing those forces and come to fore in a more healthy manner. So, IGT focuses on the present, noticing signs of people recreating their past in what is going on between and among members of the group, and it monitors how group members relate to one another. The idea is that whenever interpersonal group therapy is being exercised at group level, then there can be some simulation techniques, some role plays where people tend to identify their own life event with those of the life events. They tend to understand while being the outsider, and each member tends to respond to those events in a very effective manner and makes themselves more functioning psychologically and emotionally, and how the group also tends to function effectively. Now, under this kind of therapy, what happens, there is more members are more open to communication, there is more quality of communication among members, they are free to open up what they feel and how they can also resolve their own relational deficits or role conflicts by communication, and getting more idea from communication that how people have resolved their problems based on their experiences. So, IGT's main role is to improve the quality of clients' interpersonal relationship and social functioning to help reduce their distress. It also aims to change relationship patterns rather than the associated depressive symptoms, as well as target relationship difficulties that exacerbate these symptoms. That means, forces that lie behind any conflict, if identified, can be curbed so that the relationship problem can be reduced. Thus, IGT requires a high degree of understanding about and insight into the group dynamics and individual behavior. Group dynamics and individual behavior how an individual is responding to the dynamics of the group in terms of relationship with the other members, in terms of the functioning of the group, and how an individual adjusts with the group and the group adjusts with one particular individual. Now, these patterns of behaviors identify not only the conflicts, but the deficits and the interpersonal relationships that can be enhanced if they are being diminished. The most important thing about IGT is that this kind of therapy is being exercised at group level. Further, IGT provides strategies to resolve problems within four key areas, that is the applicability of IGT. First, it addresses interpersonal deficits including social isolation or involvement in unfulfilling relationships. That is obvious when two people are unable to define their relationship, or they face or encounter any kind of relationship problems, then IGT is the best way to cure those relationship issues. The second, it helps patients manage unresolved grief if the onset of distress is linked to the death of a loved one, either recent or past. It talks about depression which is caused due to the loss of a loved one and leads to grief and depression. The other is that IGT can help deal with difficult life transitions such as retirement, divorce or moving to another city. For example, ostracism. When a person moves on to one city to another, there can be cultural shocks or cultural differences. The person finds lot of difficulty based on their language and lifestyles, and how people tend to face those psychological problems while adjusting with those new places. It can be about that experiencing retirement age or retirement phase of their life, and how people tend to identify those kind of loneliness which they never experience. It is all about emptiness syndrome, that how people tend to identify themselves to be lonely, and how that loneliness can be overcome by adopting new patterns of behavior. And last is that it is recommended for dealing with interpersonal disputes that emerge from conflicting expectations between partners, family members, close friends and co-workers. Two people working, it is not only about reciprocation, it is also about contribution, it is also about reciprocal altruism. So, all these factors all in all affect interpersonal relationships. When these relationships are not satisfied with these criteria, then it leads to interpersonal problems, relational deficits or role conflicts, and under such circumstances interpersonal group therapy plays an important role to resolve those problems. So, this is about interpersonal group therapy and cognitive behavioral group therapy. That is all for the discussion. Thank you so much.